So the two huge problems that are unsolved in Christian theology are, why is there pain and why is there evil? In other words, why is this world so dreadful with so many hurting people? And how could there be evil in a universe created by an all-loving God? I believe it's safe to say these two problems remain completely unsolved in Christian theology. Listen to R.C. Sproul's comment on one of these, the problem of evil. R.C. Sproul, being one of the most famous Calvinist Reformed theologians of the last 50 years.
Before I go any further, to answer the question of where evil came from, I have to give my short answer to the question, my down and dirty answer to the question, where did evil come from? And my answer is this: I don't know. So maybe it's time for me to just sit down and shut up. I said, I don't know how to explain the origin of evil. And what else I can tell you is that I'm sure that in this world, I will never be able to answer that question. I don't know of any philosopher or theologian who has answered it adequately, at least to satisfy my mind, and I'm sure I'm not going to go beyond the insights of Augustine, Aquinas, Calvin, Luther, Edwards, and the rest who have wrestled with this. So that's where we start with this question of what is evil and where does it come from. That's the easy part of the two questions. The second part of the question has to do with the origin of evil and how evil could intrude into a universe created by a God who is altogether holy, altogether righteous. And not only is this universe created by such a God, it is also governed and ruled by such a God. And if this God is holy, and if he is righteous, how in the world can he tolerate so much evil in it? The origin of evil has been called the Achilles heel of Christianity. And so when we say that something is the Achilles heel, we mean that it is the supreme point of vulnerability. And critics of Christianity have said where the Christian truth claim is most vulnerable is at this point of the presence of evil in a world allegedly made and governed by a good and holy God. If God is all-powerful and has the power to create a universe without evil, or has the power to rid the universe of evil in any given moment, if he has the power to do it, and he doesn't do it, then he's not good.
So the specific question we're interested in is, if there is a perfect creator made of perfect love, who is infinite and can do anything, nothing is impossible with God, why couldn't he simply have the capacity to create us as free beings who genuinely love him and who can exist in absolute joy of God without all the pain and suffering and misery? Why this crazy universe when such an amazing, perfect, infinite God has created it? How could this be? And the apparently hitherto unknown simple solution to this matter reveals that any creation of an all-powerful creator God. Anything that he creates can only be just like the reality that we see now, which exists in one of three states: A, pre-fallen and not absolutely perfect; B, fallen; C, redeemed and not absolutely perfect. The simple explanation for why reality can be in only these phases will reveal that by the specific logic of any reality, reality can only be in this way, according to A, B, and C, including step B, with the amount of pain that this universe, this reality has, and with the amount of darkness and evil that this physical reality contains. And these answers are part of an inescapable logic that any reality will involve. And the reasoning for this can be stated in about 10 to 15 seconds and can be presented to any atheist who is against Christianity for these objections. Why would God create this sort of a universe? And any Christian who is struggling with this question.
Or he's not loving. Because what kind of being who has omnipotent power could stand by and observe the pain, the suffering, and wickedness in a universe of his own creation and not eliminate it? It can't be good.
Sproul here is discussing the simple objections that I have presented to me daily in ministry, which are only objections due to a lack of understanding of the basic logic of the structure of reality and the creator-created relationship. Apparent logical facts, which have not been considered apparently, and which show how in the basic fabric of reality, a creator can only create a reality that's just like ours and according to ABC. I want to be specific that I will not discuss how evil stems from human free will. This widely claimed view is, strictly speaking, absolutely correct in answer to the problem of evil. However, it is not in any way related to the solution I present in this article. And using free will as an explanation is problematical in ministry and in theological work, at least to the current level of development and understanding of the nature of free will among Christians, which it is fair to say is insufficient. Using free will alone and no other concepts from Scripture to explain the origin of evil and consequent pain leaves one open to the following questions. Why couldn't God create a reality in a way where our free will did not lead to such pervasive and gut-wrenching pain, evil, and suffering worldwide? Can't we humans be free without the horror of the pain of reality? Free will is mysterious. How does it work? Especially in a universe with seemingly so much determinism. If God is infinitely wise and powerful, couldn't he have created a reality that accomplished what we wanted without being such a horrific and painful reality pervaded by so much evil? And which contains creatures that genuinely love him with true free-willed love? These are good questions, and they lead to problems in using free will to explain the origin of evil and the pervasive existence of pain. A new argument is needed to show why reality created by a perfect and good God has evil and pain. An argument that really gets the job done by showing that this is how reality has to be, how God had to create it. That is what I will reveal in this article, which is a discovery about our physical reality that is desperately needed by the people of this lost world that is fading away. See 1 John 2:17. Specifically, the findings of this article uncover the following. It is built into reality, into anything created by an absolutely perfect monotheistic creator God, that by the logic of the creator-created relationship, the only way anything can exist, can be created, is to be just like things are now, filled with evil and pain. The Creator cannot create evil and pain, but as we will see in a moment, the only way any reality can exist is if the Creator God creates a reality that will fall into what humans now experience in this fallen, pain-filled, evil-influenced physical reality. To have the Creator God create anything other than this is a logical contradiction, as we will see. And thus, any reality can only be roughly like what ours is like, as far as pain and misery are concerned. To my knowledge, this argument has surprisingly not been presented before this time, despite its simplicity and rudimentary nature, and even though it comes from the Bible. This argument can be a tremendous, even miraculous asset in ministry, which has been the sole objective in developing the argument, since the argument will quickly, definitively, and authoritatively address the following reasonable and justified questions so often asked by atheists, non-believers, skeptics of Christianity, and people genuinely just curious, including Christians, as to why all the things a loving and perfectly good God could do, why would he create this particular physical reality we humans live in that now contains pain, suffering, confusion, darkness, and sin? Why would God create a reality like that? In my experience in ministry, nothing turns away believers more than this particular legitimate question. People are genuinely confused, and the question is a more than reasonable one. This argument only should be presented to people by soldiers of Christ in love and joy, for it is truly good news. A PDF of this argument and this article are available at praiseandlove.net. I will first spell out the argument in detail and then present the 10-second version that can be used quickly on the spot during the storm of gritty ministry. First, an argument stipulation, which is an absolutely perfect monotheistic creator God exists. He is the only absolute perfection. Nothing can be added to him to improve upon the perfect creator God. No higher being can be conceived. And now for the argument. Premise 1. If God creates anything at all, what he creates will be distinct from himself, different from himself, so that what is created will not be identical to God. Premise 2. What God creates in being distinct from himself and not being absolutely perfect will be lower than God. That is, not absolutely perfect. Premise 3. That which is lower than God is not God, and that which is not God is imperfect, incomplete, having defect of some sort, corrupted. Premise 4. That which is imperfect, incomplete, having some defect of some sort, and corrupt will involve blemish. Premise 5. That which is imperfect involves corruption and blemish will develop elements that are not godly, ungodly. Premise 6. What is ungodly and distinct from God has separation from God. Isaiah 59, 1 and 2. Premise 7. What is separate from God will contain fallenness and sinfulness. Premise 8. God cannot create fallenness and sinfulness, so the reality created, being different from God, separated from God, will be prone to internally generated ungodliness. Point 9. Argument conclusion. Therefore, if God ever creates anything at all, It can only be distinct from God, less than absolutely perfect, and prone to fallenness and sin until it is redeemed. Now moving out of the argument back to the text of the article. So just by God creating anything at all, just by the act of creation, what is created by God can only be not absolutely perfect. Where I have above defined not absolutely perfect as imperfect, and by that fact, anything created will be prone to succumb to having aspects that are internally caused as being against God, and thus of fallenness and sin. Presumably, there could be realities that God creates that remain in stage A, unlike ours, which went from stage A to B, and which will soon fully and completely go to C. But this is very unlikely since, point one, what is not God should spontaneously originate internally in self-caused fallenness, and point two, since God is a redeemer and his love needs to serve as a sacrifice of grace to any reality that is created, wherein reality would need to be fallen to do so maximally. Note that this argument above does not necessarily mean all of creation is ungodly or not good. The above argument does not infer that, and we know that creation is good and remained good after the fall. See 1 Timothy 4:4. But rather only specific areas contain sin, namely inside human minds. See Grupp 2018, Sin, Nothingness, The Liar Paradox, and the Contamination of Creation, published in Theologica, pages 32 to 54, available for free on praiseandlove.net. And thus creation was scarred. And this argument can be presented in the following extremely terse manner for purposes of ministry as follows. If God creates anything, it has to be separate from him and can only be imperfect. What is imperfect will contain qualities of imperfection like sin and pain, and for that reason, anything God creates will develop inside of itself pain and sin, and will need to be redeemed. But an even quicker version of the argument, if needed in ministry, is as follows. What a perfect God creates is different from him and thus is not perfect, and thus will contain imperfection and ultimately corruption. This can be presented in about 10 seconds, if not 5 or 6 seconds, to any person during the ministry setting, a short enough time interval to prevent interruptions, and the argument is simple enough that it will likely not be derailed by questions before the 5 to 10 seconds is over. And the simplicity and the biblical adherence of the argument will likely not lead to many further questions, if any at all. And ministry can merely move on to the good news of the free gift of the grace of Jesus Christ. Jeff Grupp, Kalamazoo, Michigan, praiseandlove.net, April 22, 2019.